Are we really doing this again? Because what we just witnessed tonight was supposed to be a celebration. It was supposed to be one of those landmark moments that you circle on the calendar, pull up on your phone years later, and say with a massive smile on your face, "I was watching when that happened." It was supposed to be the kind of night that reminds you exactly why you fell in love with women's basketball in the first place. A historic player, a hostile arena, a packed building full of fans who came ready to witness something special. Instead, we got a disaster. The Indiana Fever walked into the Chase Center full of momentum, full of energy, and full of genuine belief that tonight was their night. They walked out with an 88-90 loss, a furious superstar, a bewildered coaching staff, and a fan base that is absolutely seething right now. But here's the thing you need to understand before we go any further. That final score. Those two numbers sitting there looking innocent on the box score. They do not even begin to tell the real story of what happened inside that building tonight. This was not just a close loss on the road. This was not bad luck or a hot shooting night from the other team. This was history being made and immediately hijacked. This was greatness stepping forward with both hands while chaos and incompetence dragged it violently backward. This was a night where one player did everything she possibly could to win a basketball game, and the people surrounding her failed her in almost every possible way. We are going to break all of it down tonight. The history that was made, the officiating that crossed a line, the coaching decisions that defied all logic, and the one player who stepped out of the shadows and refused to let this team go down without a fight. Because tonight had all of it. The incredible and the inexcusable existing in the exact same game. So take a breath, get comfortable, because this one is going to sting. Before we get into everything that went wrong, we have to start with what went right. And what went right tonight was the kind of thing that belongs in a museum. Caitlin Clark made WNBA history at the Chase Center. In the first half of this basketball game, Clark recorded her 500th career assist. And before you brush past that number like it's just another stat line, let me put it into
for the Fever. Caitlin Clark did make history tonight. We gonna talk about it, man, in an iconic fashion. She ended up making her 500 assists to Sophie Cunningham, but the referees is still in the show. Just ultimately still in the ad. I'm hella mad. Look at this. Look at how the hell can we win when they look at this flop? You ain't even get hit. She ain't even get hit in the head, dog. She ain't even get hit in the head. Y'all see this? Bro, this has been all day. This has been all day, bro.
Full context for you, because the context is where this becomes genuinely jaw-dropping. With that single pass, Clark officially became the fastest player in the entire history of the Women's National Basketball Association to reach both 1,000 career points and 500 career assists simultaneously. She did it in 59 games. 59 games. Let that number sit in your mind for a moment, because the comparisons are what make this truly staggering. Sue Bird, widely regarded as one of the most complete, most fundamentally brilliant point guards to ever lace up a pair of sneakers in this league, needed 82 games to reach that same milestone. Sabrina Ionescu, the walking triple-double machine who had been rewriting the record books herself just a few seasons ago, needed 84 games. And Dawn Staley, a Hall of Fame legend, an Olympic gold medalist, and an absolute icon of this sport, needed 101 games to get there. Clark needed 59. That is 23 fewer games than the greatest point guard of her entire generation. That is 42 fewer games than a Hall of Famer. Those are not small gaps. Those are chasms. Those are the kinds of numbers that make you stop and recalibrate your entire understanding of what you are watching. And here is the part that makes it even more remarkable. She is doing all of this while operating as the single most
Look at this. Look at this,
This
bro.
is an official review for
Hit her all in the face. Veronica Burton been on one all game with Caitlin Clark. All game. converted, made it her business to like disrupt Caitlyn and be just an asshole all game to her, bro. I can't stunt. She balled. Veronica Burton definitely balled.
Targeted player in the entire league every single night. There is not a defensive coordinator in the WNBA who is not designing their entire game plan around stopping her. Every team loads up on her. Every scout marks her name in red. Every defender comes in with instructions to be physical, to crowd her space, to bump her off her spots, and to make every single possession as difficult as humanly possible. She is still doing this, against all of it. She is also the first player in WNBA history to record multiple games of 30-plus points and 10-plus assists in the same season. Multiple. Not once. Multiple times. The kind of performance that most players achieve once in a career if they're lucky. She has done it more than once before her second season is even finished. And she delivered this milestone tonight in a moment that felt genuinely cinematic. The 500th assist went to Sophie Cunningham, and in its own quiet way, it was the perfect snapshot of what Clark brings to this game. She did not force it. She did not manufacture it. She simply read the defense, made the right decision, and delivered the ball exactly where it needed to go. That is what separates her from everyone else on that floor. Tonight, despite relentless defensive pressure from the moment she touched the ball, Clark finished with 16 points.
Clocks, man, my goodness, man. Now I got to talk about Raven Johnson. Career game, man. 16 points, 7 to 10 from the field, just outstanding. She shot 90% from three. Now it's a 2-point game. Come on, Kelsey Mitchell.
6 assists, 4 rebounds, and 3 steals. In any other universe on any other night, that is a performance you talk about for a week. But then the second half started, and everything that was beautiful about this night got buried. Let's be completely direct about this, because too many people in mainstream sports media are dancing around it and refusing to say what actually needs to be said. The officiating tonight was a problem. A genuine, documented, infuriating problem that directly impacted the outcome of this basketball game. The Indiana Fever were called for 24 fouls tonight. Golden State was called for 19. Now on pure surface level, that discrepancy might not look catastrophic. But when you actually watch the game, when you track the possessions, when you see the contact that went uncalled on the other end, that number tells a completely different story. Clark put her head down and attacked the paint aggressively multiple times in the second half. She drove hard. She absorbed real, heavy contact from the Valkyries' interior defenders. Body hits, arm contact. The kind of stuff that gets called routinely for other star players in this league every single night. And what did she get? Nothing. Silence. A blank stare from the officiating crew. You could see it building on her face. Possession after possession, drive after drive, the frustration stacking higher and higher. She was visibly jawing at the officials. She was asking for protection. And when you are the most recognizable offensive talent in the league and you are getting hit in the paint without a single whistle, that frustration is completely, entirely, 100% justified. Then came the technical foul. After absorbing contact on a drive that was clear enough for everyone in the building to see, Clark reacted. She was furious. She expressed that frustration openly. And instead of the officials addressing the missed call that started the whole sequence, the whistle went directly against her. Technical foul. Caitlin Clark. In a game that ended 88-90, that technical cost the Fever 2 free throw attempts that never happened. 2 points that could have tied the game. 2 points that, in a 2-point loss, represent the difference between a frustrating road defeat and a moment of pure redemption. And Clark shot 8 for 8 from the free throw line tonight. Perfect. She did not miss a single attempt when she actually got to the line. But the number of drives she made into the paint, the number of times she got hit, and the number of times she was denied the chance to even step to the line was significantly higher than 8. That gap between the contact she absorbed and the calls she received is the story of her entire season. This is not a new pattern. This is something that has been visible and documented since the opening night of the season. It resurfaces consistently. And tonight, in a hostile arena, with the Valkyries defending their home court desperately.
24 fouls called on the fucking Fever tonight. Excuse my language, bro. 19 calls, well now 20 on Golden State. I'm furious right now, bro, because that's how bad this game has been. Stephanie White put Caitlin on the ball. Stephanie White put Caitlin off the ball. Like, damn, Stephanie, make up your mind. Did Caitlin Clark set majority of the damn third quarter? This was just buffoonery.
It was on full display for the entire world to see. And speaking of physical and borderline dirty, let's talk about Veronica Burton. Burton made it her absolute personal mission tonight to be a relentless nightmare for Clark from the opening tip. She was physical every single possession. She was grabbing jerseys, getting into body contact, and crossing lines that should have drawn whistles far more consistently than they did. She was disruptive in a way that teetered between competitive and dirty, and the officials allowed far too much of it to go unaddressed throughout the game. Burton can absolutely play basketball, credit where it is due. But there is a line between elite perimeter defense and the kind of physicality that should be flagged, and she spent the majority of this game walking right on that edge. The referees had every opportunity to restore order and protect the integrity of the game. They didn't, but as maddening as that is, it still wasn't the biggest failure of the night. That honor belongs to the Indiana Fever sideline. This is the conversation that needs to happen, not as a personal attack, not as a knee-jerk reaction to one bad game, but as a serious, direct examination of the coaching decisions that are quietly becoming a pattern. Stephanie White had a bad night, and in a 2-point road loss, a bad night from your head coach is unacceptable. Let's start with the Clark situation, because it underpinned everything that went wrong offensively. One possession, Clark was running the point. She was reading the defense, pushing the pace, pulling defenders out of position, and creating open looks for her teammates. The offense looked fluid. The spacing looked intentional. The whole system breathed differently when she had the ball in her hands. The very next possession, Clark was standing completely stationary in the corner, off the ball, watching isolation basketball unfold in front of her, essentially reduced to a catch-and-shoot option while the offense ground to a halt. This wasn't a one-time adjustment. This was a recurring theme throughout the game. On ball, off ball, on ball, off ball. No consistency, no clear vision, no defined role. And when your most dangerous player cannot establish a rhythm because her role is shifting every other possession, she cannot impose herself on the game the way she is capable of. The defense adjusts instantly. The offensive momentum evaporates, and the entire team suffers. But the single most difficult decision to defend tonight was the third quarter rotation. Clark sat for the majority of the third quarter, in a tight road game, with momentum on the line, against a team that was increasingly finding its footing. When your most dynamic offensive player, the one who just broke a WNBA record earlier in the same game, is on the bench during a critical stretch, you better have a very clear and very compelling reason. Because what happened in her absence was not pretty. The offense stagnated, the spacing collapsed, and by the time Clark returned, she was cold, completely out of rhythm against a defense that had spent the entire third quarter getting even more comfortable. She finished 3 for 12 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3. That shooting percentage is not who Caitlin Clark is. That shooting percentage is the direct result of a disrupted, inconsistent, poorly managed rotation.
Oh my God, bro. Correlation said, I just don't understand how Steph watched that possession and didn't call a timeout earlier. I'm so annoyed. I absolutely despise the last possession. I'm just shaking my head. Stephanie White completely. Let's see. Let's see this last possession, guys.
And then there's the bench situation. Grace Van Sluten did not play, coach's decision. Tasha Harris did not play, coach's decision. Darius Dantas did not play, coach's decision. 3 players who are on this roster specifically because the Fever front office identified frontcourt depth and defensive versatility as areas of critical need. Three players who were acquired to provide exactly the kind of energy and athleticism that could change the dynamic of a close game. 0 minutes. In a 2-point loss, every time the Fever lose a close game, this same conversation resurfaces. The players who could have contributed, the energy that could have shifted the momentum, the minutes that could have made a difference. And those players are still sitting on the bench. But all of that pales in comparison to what happened in the final seconds, because that last possession was not a product of bad luck. It was not an unfortunate bounce or a hot opponent. It was the result of a head coach who had a timeout in her pocket and chose to watch the game end rather than use it. The Fever had the ball, 2 points down. The play broke down immediately. Players looked frantic, disorganized, scrambling for something that wasn't there. The clock was bleeding. Call it. Stop the game. Give your players a breath. Draw something up. Get the ball to your best player. Instead, Stephanie White stood frozen on the sideline and watched the entire possession collapse in real time. And that image is going to be very hard to shake. This is the conversation that needs to happen, not as a personal attack, not as a knee-jerk reaction to one bad game, but as a serious, direct examination of the coaching decisions that are quietly becoming a pattern. Stephanie White had a bad night, and in a 2-point road loss, a bad night from your head coach is unacceptable. Let's start with the Clark situation, because it underpinned everything that went wrong offensively. One possession, Clark was running the point. She was reading the defense, pushing the pace, pulling defenders out of position, and creating open looks for her teammates. The offense looked fluid. The spacing looked intentional. The whole system breathed differently when she had the ball in her hands. The very next possession, Clark was standing completely stationary in the corner, off the ball, watching isolation basketball unfold in front of her, essentially reduced to a catch-and-shoot option while the offense ground to a halt. This wasn't a one-time adjustment. This was a recurring theme throughout the game. On ball, off ball, on ball, off ball. No consistency, no clear vision, no defined role. And when your most dangerous player cannot establish a rhythm because her role is shifting every other possession, she cannot impose herself on the game the way she is capable of. The defense adjusts instantly. The offensive momentum evaporates, and the entire team suffers. But the single most difficult decision to defend tonight was the third quarter rotation. Clark sat for the majority of the third quarter, in a tight road game, with momentum on the line, against a team that was increasingly finding its footing. When your most dynamic offensive player, the one who just broke a WNBA record earlier in the same game, is on the bench during a critical stretch, you better have a very clear and very compelling reason. Because what happened in her absence was not pretty. The offense stagnated, the spacing collapsed, and by the time Clark returned, she was cold, completely out of rhythm against a defense that had spent the entire third quarter getting even more comfortable. She finished 3 for 12 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3. That shooting percentage is not who Caitlin Clark is. That shooting percentage is the direct result of a disrupted, inconsistent, poorly managed rotation. And then there's the bench situation. Grace Van Sluten did not play, coach's decision. Tasha Harris did not play, coach's decision. Darius Dantas did not play, coach's decision. 3 players who are on this roster specifically because the Fever front office identified frontcourt depth and defensive versatility as areas of critical need. 3 players who were acquired to provide exactly the kind of energy and athleticism that could change the dynamic of a close game. 0 minutes. In a 2-point loss, every time the Fever lose a close game, this same conversation resurfaces. The players who could have contributed, the energy that could have shifted the momentum, the minutes that could have made a difference. And those players are still sitting on the bench. But all of that pales in comparison to what happened in the final seconds, because that last possession was not a product of bad luck. It was not an unfortunate bounce or a hot opponent. It was the result of a head coach who had a timeout in her pocket and chose to watch the game end rather than use it. The Fever had the ball, 2 points down. The play broke down immediately. Players looked frantic, disorganized, scrambling for something that wasn't there. The clock was bleeding. Call it. Stop the game. Give your players a breath. Draw something up. Get the ball to your best player. Instead, Stephanie White stood frozen on the sideline and watched the entire possession collapse in real time. And that image is going to be very hard to shake. 2 points down, ball in hand, one last chance. This is the moment every player in this league dreams about. This is the situation you run drills for, the scenario you visualize, the chance that separates the teams who find a way from the teams who watch the clock run out. The Fever had everything they needed to either tie this game or steal the win. They had the ball. They had timeouts. They had a player who had just made WNBA history in the first half. They had everything except one crucial thing. Plan. What unfolded in those final seconds was almost physically painful to watch. The spacing was non-existent from the moment the ball was inbounded. Players were tangled up, cutting into each other's lanes, scrambling to find something that simply was not there. There was no clean action. There was no clear option. There was no moment where it looked like anyone on the floor knew exactly what the play was supposed to be. Aaliyah Boston, desperate to salvage the possession, drove hard to the basket. She absorbed contact, real contact, the kind of contact that gets called in that moment in most basketball games at most levels of competition. The whistle stayed silent. The same officiating crew that had called 24 fouls on the Indiana Fever over the course of the entire game, the same officials who had been active and involved and making their presence felt all night long, collectively decided that the final seconds of a road game in a building full of home fans was not the right moment to make the call. The ball went out of bounds. The Valkyries held on. The clock hit 0. Game over. And everybody felt it. But here's the thing. As furious as every Fever fan should be about that no call, there is a failure that is even more unforgivable in those final seconds. And it belongs entirely to Stephanie White. She had a timeout. At the moment the possession started breaking down, at the moment the spacing evaporated and the players began looking frantic and disorganized, Stephanie White had the ability to stop everything. She could have called time, walked her team to the huddle, settled the nerves, and put something sensible together. She didn't. She watched, hands at her sides, frozen on the sideline as the game slipped away in real time right in front of her. There is no charitable interpretation of that decision. There is no tactical explanation that makes it defensible. You have a timeout. Your play is broken. Your players are scrambling. You call it. That unused timeout is going to linger. It is going to be the subject of conversations and debates and breakdowns for the rest of this season. Because in a 2-point loss, every decision made in those final moments carries maximum weight. And the decision that was made was to make no decision at all. That frozen image of a head coach watching a game end while holding resources she chose not to use might be the most honest and uncomfortable snapshot of where this team's problems actually come from. Here is where we land. Caitlin Clark made WNBA history tonight. She became the fastest player in league history to reach 1,000 career points and 500 career assists. She did it in 59 games, shattering milestones set by the greatest players to ever hold a basketball in this league. She did it under maximum defensive pressure in a hostile building. And she did it with the kind of quiet, devastating efficiency that has defined her since the moment she stepped onto a professional court. That is real. That is permanent. No final score changes it. No coaching mistake erases it. No missed whistle takes it away. But she also shot 3 for 12 from the field. She was given an inconsistent role that never allowed her to settle into a rhythm. She absorbed contact throughout the night that went unprotected by the officiating crew. She picked up a technical foul that directly cost her team 2 free throw attempts in a game decided by 2 points. She turned the ball over 5 times, and the Indiana Fever still lost. This is the painful, frustrating, deeply uncomfortable reality of this team right now. They are a team uniquely capable of making history and losing the exact same game in which they make it. They are a team with a player operating at a historically unprecedented level, while the structure around her continues to create unnecessary obstacles. The coaching decisions need to be examined honestly. The rotation confusion needs to be resolved. The bench needs to be used. The DNP list for capable players in close games needs to stop. And Raven Johnson cannot go back to the bottom of the rotation after what she did tonight. That performance earned something. Whether it earns a starting spot or at minimum consistent, meaningful minutes, the answer cannot be a return to watching from the bench while the offense struggles. That is not an acceptable outcome after a 70% shooting night with a team-high +4. The Fever are entering what may be the most critical stretch of their season. Playoff positioning is real. Momentum is real. The belief that this team can fix its patterns while the regular season is still being played is very much on the table. But that window does not stay open forever. The referees, the coaching staff, the rotation decisions, the final possession disasters, all of it needs to be addressed. Not with excuses, not with "we'll get them next time," with actual change that shows up in actual games. Because this roster is too talented for these results. Clark is too good for this to keep happening. And the fans who show up every single night, who watch every possession, who feel every missed call and every frozen sideline moment, they deserve better than this. So I want to hear from you right now. Does the historic milestone get completely overshadowed by this loss, or does it stand on its own regardless of the final score? Should the league office be looking more closely at how Clark is being officiated this season? Is it finally time to have the real, uncomfortable conversation about whether Stephanie White is the right person to lead this team through a playoff push? And is Raven Johnson a starter? Drop your take in the comments. Be honest. Be direct. This is the space for real conversation about this team, not comfortable takes and soft analysis. If you want breakdowns that celebrate the greatness and refuse to look away from the failures in the same breath, make sure you are locked in for everything that comes next. Because this season is not over, but the margin for these kinds of mistakes just got razor thin, and the next game cannot come fast enough.